Welcome to Sabs podcast. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. If you are new, I want to let you know that Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. I sincerely hope you really took to heart what this woman just said, because this speech was given after the George Floyd protest, and she was responding to some of the critics who are blaming the looters and the rioters for destroying property. Some of the critics who cared more about property than they did about someone's life. Why is that relevant right now? Because once again, we are hearing that same narrative. So if you have not been paying attention to mainstream media or independent media, you may not know what's happening right now in Atlanta. So there is a new facility, a $90 million facility, also referred to as Cop City, that has been built in Atlanta, actually in a forest, a public forest. So there are activists and protesters that are protesting this facility. But what is this facility for? This facility is a cop training facility. And this is something that I warned you guys about probably even a year ago now, that this is what they were going to do. They were going to fund the police, give the police more money so that they can prepare for anything else. They don't want another protest like George Floyd protest again, even though that was the largest demonstration that we've had in this country, in the history of this country. They don't want that to happen again. This is why you have the politicians, both from the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, who want to give the police more money because they want to actually build up the police state. They want to increase it. They want to prevent an uprising from something like that happening again. So you do have activists that have been protesting about this facility. Now, here are some of the pictures now, if you have not seen it, because things got a little heated in Atlanta last night. So this is from Lauren McKenzie. She shared this on Twitter. Atlanta right now, cop car on fire as they try to shut down the Cop City protest. And so I just want to show you a close-up version here of the pictures, because like I said, things did get a little bit heated. Now you have to wonder what would have caused this to happen, because in the beginning, the protests were peaceful. They were peaceful protests. But something happened that caused people to behave this way. We're going to get into that in just a second. But I want to show you a little bit more about Cop City. So I want to go ahead and share this clip here. And this is from AJ Plus. So they said the land was stolen from the Muskogee. Then it was a slave plantation. Now the city of Atlanta want to develop it into a massive cop city. So let's go ahead and get into this clip so you can get a little bit of background, and then we'll get to the issue of the protest.
We construct barricades to keep police out, police, construction, contracting companies. You hear gunshots all the time because there's a police firing range in this. Yeah, you can hear those shots right there.
Occupying this forest is how activists are resisting the construction of a $90 million state-of-the-art police training center protesters call Cop City. The facility will be developed on one of the largest green spaces in Southeast Atlanta, which has a history of oppression.
Let's pause here for a second because I want to stress the amount of money. $90 million. You see, the state's response to poverty and crime is to add more police, to ramp up the police state, instead of trying to fix the poverty issue. And if you fix that poverty issue, you can decrease the crime rate. Why not take that $90 million and invest it into those poor neighborhoods that are struggling, and struggling even more now because of inflation? Why not take $90 million and invest it into those communities? This is the same criticism I had about the MLK statue here in Boston. Now, they spent $10 million on an ugly statue that most people don't even know what it's supposed to be. Instead of taking that $10 million and investing in the neighborhoods, especially the Black neighborhoods here in Boston that are poor and working class, to help those neighborhoods, instead of doing that, they wasted $10 million on a statue. Now you have a similar situation here. They wasted $90 million on a facility to recruit more officers, to train more police officers, so that they can fight back against the type of uprising that you see happening right now in Atlanta. That's what this is all about. And I've said this before. The police are not there to protect you. They are not there to protect me. A lot of times when police officers come into these Black neighborhoods, they are there to escalate the situation. They harass the citizens of those communities. They're not there to save them. If they were there to save them, we wouldn't have the high crime rates. They're not there to prevent crime. If they were there to prevent crime, we wouldn't have the high crime rates. And we've seen this with multiple shootings. There was just another mass shooting in California the other day. Are the police preventing mass shootings? Did the police prevent this from happening in Uvalde, Texas? No, they cowered for 1 hour before they decided to act. They are ramping up the police state to stop these mass protests. They are ramping up the police state to make people fall in line because they know what is coming. They know the American people are suffering economically because of inflation, but people were suffering before inflation. Let's be real. Let's make it real clear here, because a lot of people, they want to talk about this and they want to say, oh, after the pandemic, people have been suffering through poverty in this country before the pandemic even began. There were tent communities before the pandemic. Now, the pandemic did escalate some of those situations, but I would also argue that the pandemic basically pulled the cover off of those poverty situations, so to speak. But it was always there. Let's go on.
All of it. It will be clear cut.
They cannot wait. They just want to go in and bulldoze everything and then write the history the way that they want to write it.
The fate of the forest is up in the air as the police and forest defenders both refuse to back down.
Those people, to me, through their acts, are actually domestic terrorists.
Did you hear that? So now he's calling these activists domestic terrorists. Why? Because they want to protect the land? You guys notice like anybody can be called a terrorist now? Well, what is happening here? What is happening here? Listen, the United States government won't even go as far to call someone like Dylan Roof a domestic terrorist. The young little boy who shot those people in the church in Charleston, South Carolina, they wouldn't even go as far as to call him one. But they want to call activists, environmental activists, a domestic terrorist. Now they're starting to demonize activism. Pay close attention, guys, because this is where we are headed in this country.
Corporations are pouring millions into this project, financially pressuring politicians to build Cop City.
Why did you vote to approve this facility?
The corporations, again, here we go. I'm sorry, we have to look at this one more time.
To me, through their acts, are actually domestic terrorists.
Major corporate.
Pause. We're going to go through the list of corporations as well. Corporations are pouring money into this project. That's how this project became to be. Now, why aren't these corporations pouring money into these working class and poor neighborhoods instead? Why aren't those corporations doing that? I'm talking to you, Chick-fil-A. I'm talking to you, Coca-Cola. I'm talking to you, Home Depot. Why aren't they pouring their money into that and trying to help out those people instead of pouring their money into a $90 million cop facility? When I tell you to follow the money, there is a reason for this. The money, if you follow it, it always goes back to the corporations. And they're even trying to get the politicians to be on board with it as well. So you guys see what I'm saying here. This is why I tell you, it doesn't matter who you put in office. If the money is still there, the corporate money is still in politics, we will continue to have this issue. And this is on a local level. So you have to get the corporate money out. They've bought the politicians, and the politicians buy the citizens. So until you do that, nothing is going to change. Let's go on.
Corporations are pouring millions into this project, financially pressuring politicians to build Cop City.
Why did you vote to approve this facility?
Surrounding neighborhoods that are more than 75% Black say their concerns have been silenced.
Our opinion doesn't matter. It doesn't count.
It's disrespect. And that's what folks who live here ought to be just enraged about.
Okay. Cop City. We got to hit back at these corporations, man. We got to hit back at them. Now, here is a list of the donors that have contributed to this project. If you live in Atlanta, Georgia, or if you're just curious, you might want to pay attention to this particular piece. Now, this is coming from Kamal Franklin. He's a co-host for Black Power Media. We're going to show you a clip from him in just a second as well. Cop City Board and Cop City Donor List. Here you go. Cox Enterprises, Delta Airlines, Author Blank, Equifax. Oh, look, what do you know? Credit Reporting Agency, Georgia Power, Coca-Cola Company, Home Depot, the Koch brothers. Of course, they would be a part of it. Chick-fil-A, Black Hall Studios, UPS, Norfolk Southern, the Loudermilk family, Waffle House, and Bank of America. You got the banks. You got investors like the Koch brothers. So you have the elites, you have the banks, and you even have the restaurants. You have transportation on board. Everyone should pay close attention to this. And it's funny as hell that Waffle House happens to be one of them. Because did you know that Waffle House is one of the few employees that actually employs prisoners that are released? That's one of the companies that will hire them, especially those that have a felony, because it's difficult for those who have felonies to get a job. There's that question on the application, right? Have you ever committed a felony? It's very difficult for them to have that happen. So you even got the Waffle House on here. Isn't that crazy? Look, there's more. KPMG, Accenture. It's sad because I know people that work for these companies as well. That's what it's really like struck me in a weird way. I know several of my students went to work for Accenture and KPMG. The Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta, Ernst & Young, Wells Fargo, another bank. Guys, do you see the problem? The banks are on board with it. So when I tell you, it's really not about attacking whether someone's on the right or the left, that it is really about attacking these corporations. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Because do you think the CEOs of these corporations were like, wait a minute, let's see if UPS CEO is a Democrat or Republican, and then I'll decide whether or not I'm going to donate to this project? Do you think Coca-Cola Company CEO is saying, let me see and wait if the CEO of Wells Fargo is a Democrat or Republican, and then I'm going to decide if I'll donate to this project? Hell no. Corporations have each other's back. Corporate money and corporate interests. And you can bet your bottom dollar, them investing this money into this project, there is something in it for them. Not enough people talk about this. Not enough people. Now, there were protests. Like I said, the protests started out peaceful. We're going to take a look here at one of the videos here. Now, it says violent protests have been reported in Atlanta. Violent protests have erupted tonight in Atlanta after a police killed a man on the 18th. There are reports of police cruisers on fire and rocks being thrown as activists call for a night of rage. Let's see if we can get this up here. Something I want to point out, this sign here. This sign right here that they're carrying where it says they can't kill us all. Do you know where that comes from? Or at least where I remember where it came from. There's a song by a Georgia rapper named Bubba Sparks. And in that song, the song is called Ugly. In the song, he says, don't worry about the law. Oh, he says they can't arrest us all. Don't worry about the law. They can't arrest us all. So that is what that phrase there reminds me of. And again, he's a Georgia rapper. Notice the protesters. Are all of the protesters African American? No. Similar to the George Floyd protest. You see African Americans, you see white people. It's a diverse group. And here's an aerial view here. There's a car on fire there. Does this remind you of anything? This reminds me of the George Floyd protest. People have had enough. People have had enough, ladies and gentlemen.
Fire. Yeah, we should back up. Back up, everybody. Where those shots are from the car.
Mm-hmm.
That is actually kind of dangerous.
Now, I did explain to you that there was an activist that was killed by the police. Surprise, surprise. Manuel Teron. Apparently, he was also a cinematographer, an activist. There was a segment here on Democracy Now! Where they did talk about this. They did talk to Camus Franklin, who we just referred to, that mentioned all those companies that have invested into this project. And I want you to hear what they have to say, because there was a caller who did, I mean, not a caller, there was someone who did give an account of what happened. Their voice is disguised so that they won't be, identified for safety reasons as well. Let's listen to this. Listen to this, because it's important that you understand why those protests turned from peaceful to the way that they did. Because the police killed one of their own. Listen to this.
By gunfire. Activists have now released the name of the victim of the police shooting, longtime activist Manuel Teron, who went by the name Tortuguita. In an audio statement sent to Democracy Now! Thursday, an Atlanta forest defender describes what happened and who Tortuguita was. They asked to remain anonymous and for their voice to be distorted for security reasons.
On Wednesday, January 18th, multiple police departments descended upon Weelaunee People's Park in unprecedented numbers and force. They blocked access to the park on both roads and bike trails. Some people were arrested for attempting to document police actions that day at the park. Gunfire was heard at 9:04 a.m. About a dozen shots fired in rapid succession, followed by a loud boom about a minute later. For hours after the murder of Tortuguita, police continued to hunt, assault, and arrest our brave forest defenders. Those defenders in trees were targeted with pepper bullets. One tree sitter had their tree house, which stored food and water, cut from beneath them.
This is something similar that happened during the George Floyd protest, too. There were some police officers that took activists' food and water away from them in a way, I guess, to kind of starve them out or to make them dehydrated so that they'll go away. So there were some activists that were apparently in the tree houses. They had built their own tree houses to protect the forest. And this is the response that came from some of the police officers, was to take their food away from them. I saw during the George Floyd protest, there were some police officers where people were they were having these peaceful gatherings, and they had a table set up with water bottles and with food. And I saw a police officer, I saw him walk up to that table and throw all the food and the water on the floor. Those people weren't hurting anybody. So don't tell me they only go after the ones that are violent, because that's a lie.
They were left without food and water for over 12 hours up in the tree, as police waited at the base of the tree to capture them. This same tree sitter continued to stay in their tree until the next morning when they were arrested. Other forest defenders were chased by police dogs. These defenders had to hide and flee for their lives, all the while with the nauseating knowing that their dear comrade had been murdered in the sacred land that we call home. Tortuguita was a radiant, joyful, beloved community member. They fought tirelessly to honor and protect the sacred land of the Weelaunee Forest.
So you have to understand, for people who were trying to protect the forest, you have to understand that this is considered to be sacred land. Now, where have we seen this before? Haven't we seen this before with Line 3, with the pipelines that have affected people in this country, where they're trying to bring in pipelines on sacred land, it's sacred indigenous land? We've seen this happen before. Standing Rock, similar thing. No respect for the land.
They took great joy in caring for each and every person that they came across. Tortuguita brought an indescribable jubilance to each and every moment of their life. Their passing is a preventable tragedy. The murder of Tortuguita is a gross violation of both humanity and of this precious earth which they loved so fiercely. Do not turn away from this violence. Do not allow the callousness of the police state to numb your heart. Honor Tortuguita by bravely witnessing the ongoing injustices the police and corporations are enacting upon the Weelaunee Forest. Honor Tortuguita's legacy by embodying their joyous bravery. Tortuguita's presence on this earth is a gift that will keep on giving for generations to come. It is time for people to join this movement and to say no to this pointless escalation by the police.
That was an anonymous statement by an Atlanta forest defender sent.
Right, because he didn't want people to know who, his name. This comment here, yes, this is a serious multiple violation against people, indigenous communities, civil liberty, and the residents all at once. So people have to understand, it's not like the activists just showed up and were like, yeah, we don't think you should build this facility here. There was a reason for that. There was a reason behind it. So it is considered to be sacred land. And kids said, Sabby, why would 112 kill a person? These environmental activists normally have no weapons. They are literally like hippies. WTF is wrong with 112. They murdered Tortuga, the little turtle. That is true. The environmental activists usually don't have usually don't have weapons. Let's go on because Kamal Franklin is going to come on and he's going to explain his take on this.
To Democracy Now!, his voice disguised. Vigils for the slain forest defender Tortuguita have taken place from Los Angeles to Minneapolis to Charlotte to Chicago and Atlanta. Activists held a vigil the night of the shooting and are planning a march on Saturday. For more, we go to Atlanta to speak with Kamal Franklin, founder of the organization Community Movement Builders. Kamal, welcome back to Democracy Now! Can you please tell us what you understood happened?
I just want to add, Kamal is also a host of Black Power Media, just FYI, for those of you just wondering also what he does.
Well, we have very little information on what took place besides what your earlier recording just said, that the only version of events that's really been released to the public has been the police version, the police narrative, which we should say the corporate media has ran away with. To our knowledge so far, we find it less than likely that the police version of events is what really happened. The idea that he was sitting in a tent and fired out of the tent at basically a SWAT team, DeKalb County Police, Atlanta Police, and Georgia State Troopers who were there in great numbers to do the raid that they conducted in the park.
Let's add this piece here. So basically what he's trying to inform you of is, let's just remember the only account that we have is the police department's account. So what have I told you guys about that before? How many times have the police department issued a statement and then here we go, weeks, months down the road, we realize, oh, guess what? They lied. The police department isn't going to tell on themselves. The police are going to protect the police department and they're going to protect the union as well. So that is one thing to keep in mind. But the fact that they're saying that this guy, an environmental activist, just decided to fire on all of those officers, really? Do you guys really believe that? Do you really believe that? How many times have the police officer's story been false? What about the narrative the police department gave about George Floyd? What about the narrative the police department gave about Breonna Taylor? No, it's not until we see the body cam footage that we realize, oh, wait a minute, they didn't tell the truth. So you always have to keep that in mind. They are not going to tell on themselves. The police department isn't going to be like, oh, yeah, by the way, we showed up there and we decided we didn't like the activists, so we just decided to shoot at them. Come on.
And the idea is that this person shot and then they fired back. As the little intel that we have, residents said that they heard a blast of gunshots all at once, not one blast and then a return of fire. Also, there's been no other information released. We don't know how many times this young person was hit with bullets. We don't know the areas in which this person was hit. We don't know if this is potentially a friendly fire incident. All we know is what the version of the police have given. And that's why we're calling for an independent investigation, not one that's done by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, not one that's done by any federal authority, but a complete independent investigation. Because that's the only way we're going to know what really happened. But
oftentimes these police departments investigate themselves. And the fact that that was ever even allowed, that just tells you how flawed our justice system is in this country. It should be external. It should come from the outside and it should be 100% independent. If you don't believe me, watch the documentary if it's still on Netflix. Watch the documentary on Netflix called Making a Murderer. And whether you believe that he's guilty or not, if you just watch the first season, you can see how the police department investigating themselves obviously caused a lot of problems.
Right now, based on what we do know, we cannot say anything except that this is probably a political assassination. This is something that could have been prevented. There was no reason for them to take the tactics that they did in terms of going into the forest with weapons in hand, with pepper spray, with live ammunition to go shoot forest defenders who were engaging in civil disobedience and direct action politics.
Kamau Franklin, can we step back and talk about what Cop City, proposed Cop City is and why people are encamped there?
Cop City is an idea that came after the 2020 uprisings by the city of Atlanta, the Atlanta Police Department, and the Atlanta Foundation, Atlanta Police Foundation.
Notice what he just said. The idea came about after the uprising in 2020. This is exactly what I was trying to tell you. They're trying to make sure it does not happen again.
The idea basically is that they want to develop a militarized police base that's right next to a black and brown working class community. Yep. And by building this space, they want to cut down over 100 acres of forest. They want to develop an area where there's a room for explosives testing, over 12 firing ranges, yep. A place where there's a Black Hawk helicopter landing pad, a training center for them to practice crowd control. We should also mention that they are engaged in international training with the Israeli police.
You heard that? Did you hear that? All these people are connected, you guys. They want to practice crowd control. Now, why would they want to practice crowd control? Because they don't want people to come out and protest again. That's why. They're all connected, though.
And so we think this project really is the beginning of a militarized police base here in Atlanta, which will be the largest facility of its kind in the country. And the reason for doing this, coming out of the uprisings, we believe, is to stop movement politics and movement building in Atlanta, to coordinate efforts across the country with other police departments and now internationally to stop movement building. And we think this is going to be further sort of terroristic action on black and brown communities, yes, by a police state, which is out of control at this particular stage.
Come out.
That's right, 100%. And I just want to add as well, something else that we have to be mindful of. Who are the communities that they're most likely to target? Black and brown communities. They'll target homeless people too, by the way. And although black people are only 13% of the national population, we're about approximately 40% of the homeless population. So just keep that in mind. They are preparing for any next future uprising. They are preparing for it. They don't want another George Floyd protest. And Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi, with all their kneeling in kente cloth, the reality is they don't want it either. They don't want another one of it. They don't want people out of control. They don't want the people to have any power. They don't want the people to rise up. They don't want that either. Now, they're not going to say that, because then people might be like, you're kind of racist. Sounds a little racist to me, bud. Why do you think they're funding the police more? They're trying to stop any type of future movement building. This is why I'm telling you guys, we have to act now. When I tell you this organization that Shama Sawan is starting, Workers Strike Back, even Shama, she gets it. She understands this is not going to be won on the electoral level. We have to actually mobilize the working class people. We have to mobilize poor people in this country to fight back against the elites. And that includes the police state, because the police state protects the elites. They don't protect us. If you cannot protest, and I'm not trying to make everybody do so, because I know some people don't feel comfortable and some people physically cannot go out and protest. But here's something that you can do. You can boycott all these companies right here, the ones funding the project, the UPS, Waffle House, Coca-Cola, Delta. Delta says they love to fly in the shows. Apparently, Delta loves to donate money to cops. And now that shows. Boycott them all. You got an account at Wells Fargo, close your account and open it somewhere else. In fact, you're better off opening an account at a credit union anyway. to be honest with you. Bank of America, I left them years ago. I advise you to do so too. Coca-Cola can take their nasty ass soda and shove it. Shove it. It's bad for you anyway. Just get rid of it. Stop supporting them. Stop supporting Chick-fil-A. I mean, how many more warning signs? And don't get me wrong, Chick-fil-A has good sandwiches. But how many more warning signs do we need about Chick-fil-A to stop supporting them? It's not just this one. UPS, bump them. Just use the U.S. Postal Office. Let's do it the old school way. Forget all of these people. This is a hot mess. This is terrible. Home Depot, screw them. Go shop at Lowe's. Take a screenshot. Take their names. And stop supporting them. This is incredibly dangerous. Do you guys know what this says? This says that the corporations, the banks, the elite families, the restaurant organizations, transportation, they are all willing to work together to shut you down. They are all willing to work together to stop you from building any type of movement. All of you should be concerned. Because at the end of the day, they're not thinking about left versus right. They're thinking about how to use their resources to stop us. So the next time when someone comes to you and they say that you should not participate in a march, if there are people who are going to be a part of that march that are in a different political ideology than you, you tell them shove it, because these corporations have no problem working with other corporations, regardless of their political ideology. They're not even thinking about it. When it comes time to shut down the people who are working class and the people who are poor, they have no problem working together. Eric, I'll take that comment on Rockfin. When I tell you it's a class war, they're all against us, all of them. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. Hey, yo, we say no, corporations gotta go. Replace them with co-ops, y'all. Charter public banks to suck the power away from big banks and ensuring community banks and credit unions to get them on our side. Yes, guys, I'm serious when I tell you, you really should be, if you have credit unions near you, you really should be investing in a credit. You should have your account at a credit bank instead of Bank of America. You should have it at a credit union where the owners come from the community. Pass right of first refusal laws to transfer ownership to workers, mandating corporations make an offer to the workers to purchase the company once they grow beyond a certain threshold. Before they outsource out of the state, automate, sell to, or merge with another company, file for bankruptcy, go public, or even after they've gone public, to purchase the company and restructure it into a worker co-op. If they've shown to have a record of egregious and abusive behavior at putting the public trust, environment, workers, and consumers at risk, then the government rips ownership away and gives it to the workers. Form government agencies that provide counseling, tax resources, a voice in government, government contracting, consultation, education, training, financing, research, all to make it easier to form business cooperatives from scratch or to aid in the conversion process. When purchasing from the owner of a corporation, when applying right of refusal, first refusal law. You do this and you end poverty and you remove what cops protect, the corporation. As my man Sergio would say, one and done. Thank you for the super chat, Zach. The police are not focused on actual crime at all. No, They spend more time at Dunkin' Donuts than they do actually trying to stop criminals. Come on. Come on. The Oracle at Delphi says they see it coming. JB, Sabby, remember when I showed that the National Association of Realtors gave big bucks to Congressman Loudermilk? I just talked about that today. There you go. You got to see where the money's coming from. George says they can't kill us all in Wellesley Lowry's memoir, compiled from the Washington Post reporter's messy notes, which aspires to tell the story of Ferguson, Missouri, where in August 201 of the blank, 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 etc. Thank you. JB says a riot is the language of the unheard. That's from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Thank you for the super chat, Yonina. The move bombing taught us absolutely nothing. And Ashura says, Sabs, Bank of America steal people money out of their accounts for no reason. Yeah, Bank of America has a lot of fees. That's one of the reasons why I left them. Fees and customer service. And I'm all about that customer service, son. All right.